My name is Liana, and people always told me weddings bring out the best in families. I wish that had been true. The ceremony was over, the vows said, the photos taken. Now the reception glowed around me, soft amber lights strung above our heads like borrowed stars, music humming through the air, guests drifting like warm currents. I could still feel the ghost of my husband's hand on mine from our first dance. Everything was supposed to feel light. But the moment I saw my mother walking toward me, the air around me changed. She wore that smile, the one she saved for special occasions and special manipulations. Not the warm smile from childhood photos. Not the soft one she used when I scraped my knee or came home late from school. This one was glossy, practiced, carefully pinned into place like a badge she'd polished for weeks. My stomach tightened before she even reached me. "Sweetheart," she said, brushing non-existent dust off my shoulder. "You look adequate." My mother never missed an opportunity to trim joy into something manageable. Before I could respond, she leaned in close enough that her perfume, white lilies and control, flooded my senses. Her lips hovered near my ear, her smile widening. "We're passing the car his parents gave you," she whispered. I froze. For a second, I thought I misheard her, that maybe the music or the chatter had blurred her words. But her smile stayed steady, her eyes gleaming with the same satisfaction I'd seen 100 times growing up. She waited for the shock to land. "Excuse me?" I breathed. "We're giving it to your brother," she said, tapping my hand lightly, like she was delivering good news. "He needs it so much more than you. You and Adrian can share a vehicle for now. Newlyweds hardly go anywhere." She laughed softly, one of those polite social laughs that sounded like clinking glass. But beneath it was intention. She wasn't making a suggestion. She was making a decision.
A decision for me.
A decision about something that wasn't hers. The car had been a gift from Adrian's parents during the rehearsal dinner. They'd handed me the keys directly, saying, "Something to help you start your life together." It wasn't new, but it was dependable.
And it meant something.
A welcome. A gesture of trust. A physical symbol that I was joining a family that valued me. A family very different from my own. And now my mother, at my wedding, was casually announcing that she had decided to give that gift away. Because my younger brother needed it. "Mom," I said carefully, forcing my voice to stay steady, "you can't be serious." "Oh, don't make that face," she said, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "You're married now. You have a new support system. Your brother doesn't." My brother, who had totaled 2 cars. Who borrowed money he never returned. Who believed consequences were optional. Behind my mother stood my brother himself, smirking, hands in pockets like he'd won something. And behind him, my father, eyes already avoiding mine as if he were preparing his excuses. My world pulsed around me, the wedding music suddenly too bright, too loud, like someone had turned the happiness up just to mock me. I glanced toward Adrian across the room. He was speaking with one of his cousins, but he sensed me looking. His brows lifted, a silent question passing between us. "You okay?"
No.
Not even close. Because at that moment, standing in my own wedding dress, veil brushing my shoulders, guests laughing around me, I realized something that stole the breath from my lungs. My mother hadn't come to congratulate me. She had come to claim something, like she always did. And this time, it wasn't just something small. This time, she wanted the one thing that symbolized my new beginning. And she wanted to give it away.
To him.
I swallowed hard, forcing every emotion back down. This wasn't the moment to explode. But it was the moment everything started. For a moment, I simply stared at my mother, wondering if she genuinely believed this was normal wedding conversation. Maybe in her world it was. In her world, gifts were not possessions, they were bargaining chips she could slide across the table whenever she pleased. "You already told him, didn't you?" I asked quietly, glancing at my brother. Nathan shrugged without guilt. "They said you wouldn't mind. I mean, you barely drive." "I drive enough," I said, keeping my voice low but firm. "And even if I didn't, it's mine." My mother sighed dramatically, the way she always did when I tried to assert something. Sweetheart, don't start. This is not the place. You chose the place, I wanted to say, but I swallowed it. The reception music shifted into something slower, couples drifting onto the dance floor. Laughter bubbled near the dessert table. Glasses clinked like tiny bells. The world continued its celebration, completely unaware of the fracture forming beneath my feet. I'll talk to you later, I said finally, needing space, needing breath. But when I stepped back, my mother stepped forward, catching my wrist with elegant fingers that tightened just enough to remind me of her tone. Liana, she said, voice lowering but smile still etched in place. Don't embarrass us. We've already put things in motion. What does that mean? I asked. She tilted her head as if speaking to someone slow. We moved the car this morning. Nathan drove it to our house. My stomach dropped. This morning. Before the ceremony. Before the vows. Before I even walked down the aisle. My voice shook. You took our car? Ours, she repeated, laughing lightly. His parents may have given it to you, but you'll both manage without it. Nathan won't. I felt something inside me tighten, a thread pulled too far. Before I could respond, someone touched my elbow. Adrian. His presence always felt like a steadying hand on my spine, grounding me. He looked from my mother to my brother to me, reading the tension like a map. What's going on? He asked softly. My mother's smile sharpened. Oh, nothing for you to be concerned about. We were just telling Liana about a little surprise. A surprise? Adrian repeated, eyes narrowing with gentle suspicion. Nathan folded his arms. They're giving me the car your parents gifted her. She doesn't mind. I watched the shift in Adrian's expression, the soft confusion replaced by slow, quiet disbelief. You took the car? He asked my mother. She waved a hand. Borrowed. Until Nathan gets back on his feet. It was our wedding gift, Adrian said, his voice still polite but cooling by the second. My father cleared his throat, stepping in as if to mediate. Look, son, it's not a big deal. You two can handle this. You're responsible. Nathan needs a fresh start. A fresh start. Nathan had been given more fresh starts than birthdays. And suddenly, watching my new husband fight to maintain composure, watching my family dismiss boundaries with the ease of brushing away crumbs, I felt a heat rise in my chest I had spent years swallowing. No, I said. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. My mother's jaw tightened a fraction. Liana, she whispered sharply, don't create a scene. You created it for me. Her eyes hardened. Nathan's smirk faltered. Adrian took my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. A quiet reminder that I wasn't standing alone, not anymore. What do you want to do? He asked, not looking at them, only at me. And for the first time in years, the answer wasn't coded in hesitation or guilt. I want my mother to explain, I said, why she thought stealing from her daughter was acceptable. My mother's eyes flashed. Stealing? Don't be dramatic. You took something that didn't belong to you, I said. That's the definition. The music swelled behind us, a romantic song meant for dancing couples, not fractured families. But maybe this was the moment where the old script finally began to tear. My mother's face didn't move, not even a twitch cracking the lacquered calm she'd spent years perfecting. She had performed this role so long she could probably hold that smile through fire. But her eyes, those betrayed the first flicker of something unstable. Liana, she said, voice smooth as pressed silk. You are overreacting. It's a car. We're family. We help each other. Family. She always used that word like a leash. I felt Adrian's thumb brush the back of my hand, small and steady, asking without speaking. Do you want me to step in? Or let you stand your own ground? I squeezed once. I've got this. My father shifted his weight, already sighing, preparing the familiar speech about unity and understanding. Nathan shoved his hands deeper into his pockets, gaze darting between us with rising irritation, as if he couldn't believe this wasn't going his way. I asked you a question, I said to my mother. Why did you think this was okay? She tilted her head, pitying, condescending. Because you've always been the reasonable one. Nathan isn't as strong as you. He needs support. There it was. The old script. The one I'd been assigned since childhood. Liana's the mature one. Liana won't complain. Liana will understand. Liana can give this up. A lifetime of tiny sacrifices disguised as moral obligations. I felt my jaw tighten. Being reasonable doesn't mean I stop having boundaries. You've never had a problem helping before, she said, her tone slipping like oil. Why change now? Why make everything difficult on your wedding day? Because for once, it wasn't help they wanted, it was entitlement. Because it's not yours to give, I said gently but firmly. It's mine. She gave me a sad little smile, as if I were a child clutching a toy I was too old for. Oh, sweetheart. Gifts don't have to be so literal. Adrian finally spoke. With respect, ma'am, they do. My father frowned. Son. No, Adrian said, still respectful, still calm, but with a steel I knew well. Your daughter just got married. This is supposed to be her day. And instead, she's dealing with the fact that her wedding gift was taken behind her back. The words landed like quiet thunder. People nearby started glancing over small looks at first, then longer ones. Whispering. Tilting heads. Curious eyes catching the tension in the air like a scent. My mother noticed and straightened instantly. Her smile brightened artificially. Let's not cause drama. This is exactly why I didn't tell you earlier. You're being emotional. Emotional? I repeated softly. I'm being disrespected? Nathan scoffed. You're blowing this up because you want to look superior. You have a husband now. You don't need that car. I turned to him slowly. Nathan, this isn't about need. It's about ownership. He rolled his eyes. Whatever. Mom already promised it. Mom can't promise what doesn't belong to her. Something in him twitched, frustration twisting with disbelief. He wasn't used to me not bending. My father stepped forward then, lowering his voice but raising the pressure. Liana, sweetheart, you know how he's been struggling. A little sacrifice won't kill you. There it was. The guilt. The weight. The expectation. The identity I'd carried like a second skin. I inhaled slowly. Dad, all my life I've made sacrifices, so he wouldn't have to. And I thought that was love. But it was just convenience. Your convenience. His eyes narrowed. My mother stiffened. Nathan's smirk evaporated entirely. I realized, in that exact moment, that they hadn't expected pushback. They'd expected the same version of me I'd always been, the quiet daughter who absorbed disappointment in silence. But that daughter had grown up. And today, she was wearing a wedding dress and a spine she hadn't borrowed from anyone. I released Adrian's hand and stepped closer to my mother, lowering my voice enough that only our small circle could hear. You didn't give me a chance to decide, I said. You decided for me. Again. On a day that wasn't about you. Her voice dropped to a serrated whisper. Don't do this, Liana. But it was already happening. This wasn't drama. This wasn't rebellion. This was the moment the role they wrote for me finally stopped fitting. My mother's whisper still hung between us like smoke, thin, sharp, suffocating. Don't do this, Liana. But the thing she feared wasn't a scene. It was accountability. And that was already spilling into the room. I straightened my shoulders, the lace at my neckline tightening, as if urging me forward. Mom, you didn't ask, I said quietly. You took. That's not help. That's control. Her nostrils flared just enough for me to notice. Stop being dramatic. You're making yourself look foolish. No, I said. I'm making myself look like an adult. Nathan scoffed loudly enough for a few guests to turn. Oh my God, Liana. It's a used car, not a kidney. I looked at him, really looked at him. The unearned confidence, the assumption that my belongings existed as backup plans for his mistakes. This is about more than a car, I said. He smirked, sure. You always make things bigger than they are. No, Adrian cut in, his voice calm but carrying. Things have always been bigger than you pretended they were. Nathan's smirk twitched. My father stepped forward again, trying to regain control of the narrative. Honey, you've always been the sensible one. You know your brother's struggles. I turned to him. Dad, I've been sensible since I was 12. And since then, every mistake Nathan made became my responsibility. Every time he failed, I had to succeed twice to cover it. His mouth opened, then closed. He had no script for when I spoke plainly. My mother's voice sharpened like a blade wrapped in velvet. This is your wedding, Liana. If you continue this tension, people will think poorly of us. There it was. Her real concern. Not the car. Not my feelings. Not Adrian. Image. I took a breath, steady and slow. Mom, people thinking poorly of you isn't my burden. And if they do, maybe it's because you took something that didn't belong to you. Her smile wobbled just once. Around us, guests were pretending not to stare while staring very obviously. A few whispered behind hands. A cousin held up a phone but lowered it when Adrian gave him a look that could melt steel. Then, as if my mother felt control slipping like sand, she played her final, familiar card. Nathan is struggling, Liana, she said, voice trembling just enough to appear sympathetic. He might lose his job. He has no car, no savings. Be compassionate. You have so much already. There it was. The guilt. The emotional hook that had lodged into me my entire life. I felt it go in. Old habits don't dissolve instantly. It pricked the softest part of me, the part that always wanted to fix, to soothe, to make everyone comfortable. But for the first time, the guilt didn't settle. It slid right off. Mom, I said softly, having needs doesn't entitle him to my things. Nathan stepped closer, jaw tightening. So, what? You're just going to let me struggle? I turned to him slowly. Nathan, your struggles don't cancel out my rights. Or my boundaries. He blinked, confused, as if the concept of me saying no was a foreign language. What happened to you? He muttered. You used to be nice. I'm still nice, I said. I'm just not available for exploitation anymore. My mother's breath hitched. And then the moment that shifted everything. Adrian placed a small velvet pouch in my hand. I looked at him, confused. It's the spare key, he whispered. I kept it with me. I had a feeling. A feeling. My heart clenched because of course he did. Of course he knew. He always noticed what others ignored. My mother's eyes darted to the pouch. Nathan's jaw tightened. It's symbolic, Adrian said gently, but we'll make it real. Something inside me steadied, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. I closed my fingers around the key. It was warm from Adrian's touch. I want the car returned, I said simply. Tonight. My mother's face cracked, not dramatically, not loudly, but subtly, like a porcelain line no one expected to see. You are embarrassing us, she hissed. No, I said, feeling the words settle like truth in my bones. I am defining myself. The air between us thickened. People held their breath. Even the music seemed to soften, waiting. This was the moment. The shift. The unveiling. And I wasn't done. The room felt suspended, music floating, guests murmuring, lights flickering like nervous breaths. Every face near us carried the same expression, half curiosity, half disbelief, as if they had wandered into the climax of a movie they weren't prepared to watch. My mother leaned in so close I could feel her breath against my cheek. You're humiliating this family, she whispered. No, I murmured back. This family humiliated itself the moment it stole from me. Her jaw tightened, but I didn't wait for her to respond. I turned toward my brother instead. Nathan, I am not your backup plan. He looked offended, like I'd struck him. I never asked to be your responsibility. You didn't have to, I said. Mom and Dad assigned me that role, and you enjoyed every second of it. My father stepped forward again, voice low and controlled. Liana, don't turn this into a therapy session. We made a simple choice. You're making it personal. It is personal, I said. You took something personal. Without asking. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, exasperated. You're married to a man who is more than enough. Why are you being so possessive? Possessive. As if wanting to keep a gift given to me, a gift meant for my new life, was greed. Adrian's voice cut through like quiet steel. With respect, sir. I didn't marry Liana to watch her be taken advantage of. My mother's nostrils flared. Watch your tone. Adrian didn't flinch. I am watching it. Carefully. The tension between them nearly sparked. My mother wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by the calm kind of man she couldn't intimidate. Her usual tools, guilt, image, tone, slipped through her fingers like water. And so she reached for her oldest weapon, rewriting the narrative. She straightened her posture, adjusting her shawl as if stepping into character. Then, with a voice loud enough for nearby guests to hear, she said, "We were only trying to help your brother. We thought you'd be generous. This," she gestured around dramatically, "is all being blown out of proportion." People turned, heads lifted, conversations dimmed around us. Of course, she made it public, because public sympathy was her currency. I felt something inside me settle, like a decision that had been waiting years for breath. "Fine," I said, stepping forward. "Let's be clear then." My mother blinked, uncertain for the first time. "You took the car without asking," I said calmly. "You moved it before the ceremony. And you planned to give it away while pretending it wasn't a violation." Guests murmured. Whispers rippled through the room. Nathan scoffed, cheeks flushing. "You're twisting it." "No," I said. "For once, I'm telling it exactly as it happened." My father's voice cracked slightly. "Liana, enough." "No," Adrian said quietly. "She's finally telling the truth." There was a moment, just a second, where the entire room seemed to tilt toward me. Not with judgment. Not with shock. With attention. And I realized something painfully clear. My parents had always feared my voice. Not because it was loud, but because it was honest. "You want to talk about generosity?" I said, turning to my mother.
Fine.
"Let's do that." Her eyes narrowed, sensing danger. My whole childhood, I gave up space so Nathan could have more. I gave up new clothes so he could have mine. I gave up time, opportunities, energy so he could be comfortable. Nathan's jaw tightened. "You're making us look bad." "You made yourselves look bad when you took my wedding gift," I replied. My mother's lips parted, but no words came out, just a tremor of disbelief. Then I turned to Adrian, not theatrically, not dramatically, just with truth. "This is our life now," I said softly. "And I'm choosing us." He reached for my hand, warmth steady, grounding me back into myself. And when I looked back at my family, something in me finally broke free. The fear. The guilt. The obligation sewn into me since childhood.
Gone.
"This ends today," I said. The taking. The excuses. The entitlement. All of it. Nathan made a frustrated sound in his throat. "You can't just cut us off." "I can," I said gently. "And I will, if the alternative is losing myself." Silence. Heavy.
Real.
My mother's voice came back thin and cracking. "You're choosing him over us?" "No," I said. "I'm choosing me for the first time." And that, more than the car, more than the confrontation, is what shattered them. For a long moment, none of us moved. The music carried on, muffled by the tension hanging over our little circle. Nearby guests pretended to be absorbed in their plates or conversations, but their stolen glances told the truth. They were watching an ending they didn't understand. My mother was the first to find her voice again. "You're going to regret this," she whispered, her expression caught between disbelief and fury. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I didn't shrink under her disappointment. "No," I said quietly. "I'll regret if I don't stop this now." Nathan scoffed under his breath, muttering, "Unbelievable." But he didn't come closer. For once, he looked like he wasn't sure which role he was supposed to play, the victim, the brother, or the beneficiary of our parents' blind indulgence. My father simply shook his head. "This is not how families act."
Exactly, I said.
"Families don't take from each other. They don't manipulate. They don't decide someone else's property belongs to them. They don't treat responsibility like a punishment and entitlement like a birthright. His mouth tightened, but he didn't argue. Adrian stepped beside me, not in front of me, not shielding me, but with me. There was no need for words. His presence was enough. I faced my mother one last time. I want the car back, I said. Tonight. That's non-negotiable. Her eyes flashed with old fury, the kind that always made me crumble growing up. But it didn't land this time. Not with a room full of witnesses. Not with Adrian steady beside me. Not with the boundary I had finally allowed myself to have. You're choosing a material possession over your own family, she hissed. No, I said gently. I'm choosing respect over manipulation. Nathan threw his hands up. Whatever. Keep your stupid car. I didn't want it anyway. He stormed off, his stiff posture betraying the sting of losing an easy win. My father followed him reluctantly, but before leaving he paused, staring at me as if seeing someone unfamiliar. You changed, he said quietly. I nodded. I grew. He didn't reply. He turned and walked away. That left my mother, the woman whose approval I had chased for 28 years. The woman who had shaped my sense of worth in ways I was still unlearning. She took a long breath, shaky and uneven. You will come crawling back one day. No, I said, careful and calm. I won't crawl back anywhere. But if you ever come to me with honesty instead of expectation, I might open the door. Her face twisted. She hated the imbalance, hated not being in control. She stepped back, wounded pride stiffening her spine. Then she left the room without looking at me again. And just like that, not loudly, not dramatically, but irrevocably, the axis of my life shifted. The applause came seconds later, soft at first, then warmer. Not for the fight, but for the choice. A few guests nodded at me in quiet solidarity. Some offered gentle smiles. One of Adrian's aunts even whispered, "Good for you, sweetheart." But the person I cared about most was holding my hand. Adrian leaned in, his forehead touching mine. You okay? I exhaled, slow, shaky, freeing. I think for the first time in a long time, I'm more than okay. We stepped onto the dance floor as the music swelled again. Not to cover the moment. Not to pretend nothing had happened. To claim the moment. His arms wrapped around me and mine around him. My cheek against his shoulder, my eyes closing as the weight I'd carried for years finally loosened. This is your life now, Adrian murmured. Yours. No one else's. I nodded against him.
Ours.
But finally mine too. We danced, a slow, honest dance meant not for guests or photos or performance, but for relief. For rebirth. For the quiet triumph of choosing myself. Hours later, when the reception ended, we stepped outside into the cool night. The air smelled like fresh leaves and possibility. A tow truck quietly rolled into the parking lot with our car, the driver waving politely. Delivery for Liana? I smiled. Not triumphant. Just whole.
Thank you, I said.
The car wasn't just a vehicle anymore. It was a symbol. Of boundaries. Of voice. Of freedom earned the hard way. Adrian opened the passenger door for me, and as I slid in, I felt something uncoil inside my chest, a knot that had existed since childhood undoing itself one thread at a time. As he got behind the wheel, he reached over and took my hand again. Ready to start our life? I looked at him, at the road ahead, at the quiet night that felt like a promise. Absolutely, I said. And with the engine humming beneath us, we drove away. Not from a wedding, not from a confrontation, but from a version of me that no longer existed. I wasn't the easy daughter anymore. I was mine.